Here we are today. What we doing? We're going back to behind the uranium curtain. But today we're going to do a little education. We're going to teach you how you can get involved. We're going to teach you what you can do here. And so let's take a look at what we're going to be looking at now and start doing some learning. But first, for those who are squeamish, kids are in school today, LUDS disease. Let me talk about LUDS disease a little bit, because LUDS disease is basically heavy metal poisoning. And you add uranium materials to it, that's LUDS disease. It's defined, look it up. It is from this area, named from this area of all our unique cancers. So we're going to take a look at mutations. We're trying to get more information in this valley regarding that, but people do not like to reveal that. So we're going to take a look at those places where people have been studying it and take a closer look at kind of problems we either have, had, two-headed fish, whatever, things we have in our community. Well, that's a little bit of what we're going to share with you about LUDS disease. LUDS disease is exactly what it is. It's heavy metal poisons that you get from water, you get from breathing it in. Once it gets in your body, heavy metals have their way of going into the nervous tissue, going to your kidneys, your liver, basically everywhere in your body. But some of them, not everything's exactly the same. The sequence of contaminated materials and heavy metals, especially the uranium suite, they're not all the same. There's different isotopes. Some of them have very similar routes. They go in the body, I can explain a simple one like uranium. When uranium is breathed in, hope you do, and hope your body functions well, and that has a bit to do with your exposure and how much you breathed in, what kind of detox material you ingest to help you remove some of the things. There are a number of greens that help remove heavy metals from the body. But for the most part, it comes into your lungs, and when it's in small size particles, micromillimeter sizes, and that's what we call fugitive dust, the kind of thing that's difficult for your lungs to get rid of. But hey, if you're not a smoker, you haven't burned up your cilia in your lungs are going to do the best they can in removing this material and put it back into your throat. Maybe you'll cough it out, but most people end up swallowing it, and it goes into your gut. Of course, you get it in your gut from other ways, dust on your food, materials, your hands, but for the most part, it's an airborne contamination pathway. And that airborne contamination, this gets in there, and your body tries to get rid of it. Well, it gets in your gut, that's another thing. Hopefully you're going to pass it as quickly as you can before it gets absorbed. What state it's in, whether it's elemental, which a lot of this stuff is, and if you know anything about elements, elements just don't want to remain elements. They want to connect with something, they want to bond. So they do what they do. They bond, and they bond with things that help them travel through the body or become more absorptive. It can be absorbed better into your body. So here we are, breathing it in our community. Not this time of the year too much because, snow covering it, keeping things wet, keeping the fugitive dust level down, but it's coming our way eventually. It's going to dry out. People are going to disturb it. It's already been disturbed by all the washing and flooding. Every time it happens, it resurfaces, redistributes things, puts the little stuff afloat. That's the stuff that we don't ever want to breathe. So, I'm with SAFECAST, Citizen Scientists. It's a group that originated out of Fukushima, and we're uploading data and information for our community. Here's what a typical, map that we may share with you. I guess I could put it like this, but do another job, and I'll just show you it on mine here, so we can take a look at it that way. How's that? Take a look at the same map. There it is. Let me see. There we go. Oh no, I guess this was a different one. This is Bonneville Community Neighborhood. Right there in the lower left corner is the Senior Citizen Center, the Employment Office. We have the Greek Church right over there. And as you can see, those little bubbles, that's just from driving in the vehicle, reading as we drive down the road. Obviously, depending on the sources, we're there to look at the source area up in the right-hand corner. That's one of the issues we had. That's when people wanted to have it checked, and we just happened to go wandering somewhere else. Like, hey, let's go down and visit a friend, stop at the senior center. So we walked down there, walked by the park, and that's the data that was collected. Obviously, there's a lot more there, and a lot more concern. That's sieverts per hour. On the left-hand side is your graph, your color graph. But basically, no, you don't want to camp there, you don't want to sleep there, and most of all, you don't want any of that airborne material getting into you. This was done on a snowy, wet day. This is just gamma radiation being picked up. None of the particle stuff, alpha and beta materials was, let's just say, it's under the snow. As we say in Japan or elsewhere, keep it in the water. Yes, a lot of water if you can. So, let's take a look at what SAFECAST is about, what SAFECAST does, and, hopefully get people involved in our community who want to stay alive and keep their children safe. So, here we go for SAFECAST.
What is SAFECAST?
So SAFECAST, I mean, it's a little bit of a long story. I'll try to compress here, but basically, right after the earthquake in March of in Fukushima, I have friends in Japan, and I instantly living in a place where we have big earthquakes like Los Angeles. There's a sort of mutual camaraderie there. So I reached out to everybody I knew right away to find out, make sure everybody was safe, knew what was going on, and as we were kind of talking about what was happening, it became clear that there was something happening with this nuclear plant, and nobody could find out any information. And so a handful of people who I was talking with online, we had a little email chain at the time, sort of thought, well, there's probably just a lot of chaos in country at the moment. So we can go online. We know how the internet works and stuff. We can go find some of this data and maybe put it together in a nicer package for people so they can understand it quickly. Because obviously this data has to be there, right?
Yeah,
it's a nuclear plant. Somebody's got to be paying attention to this.
We hope.
Right. So that was the problem. We went and looked, and it wasn't just that people couldn't find the information. It's that it wasn't there. There was no monitoring in place of any kind. So once we kind of got past the shock of realizing that there was
and this is right after the
earthquake, right? Yeah, within the
hit.
first week, 2 weeks,
Oh, wow.
right during this time. We were looking all over, and there was literally no systems in place to keep track of what was happening at this point. And so our initial thought was, we know a bunch of people, we can go get a whole bunch of Geiger counters and just give them out to people and let people take the readings, and then we'll at least have something. And then that became as much of a problem because the entire world supply of Geiger counters sold out in like 24 hours after that happened.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, there wasn't really a big market for Geiger counters before that, right? Nobody was paying attention. Nobody cared. So, we kind of had to take a step back and figure out what we were going to do. And we had a few devices. We didn't have nearly as many as we wanted to. And we kind of came up with this idea that rather than having one device and taking one reading with it and sort of sending in that one reading someplace, if there was a way that we could make this one device mobile, collect a whole bunch of readings with it. And so we developed a system that we call the BGeigy, because the packages sort of look like little bento boxes. We attach them to cars, they have GPS on them, and we drive around and they collect a reading every 5 seconds as we drive. And so now with one device, rather than collecting 1 or 2 readings throughout a day, you can collect 20 or 30,000 readings.
So you guys went out then right after this, went all over the area near the nuclear power plant,
exactly.
and just started taking readings.
Started making more of the devices, giving them out to other people, having other people drive around, just collecting and publishing, which is the big piece of that is
while you were doing that, obviously the news agencies were all reporting what was going on and things like that. Did you find discrepancies between what the readings you guys were getting and what was being reported to the people of not only Japan but the rest of the world?
Well, yes and no. I mean, one of the things that we ended up doing with this, not necessarily intentionally, was kind of changing how radiation is measured in general, because previously they would take one reading sort of from a top of a building in the middle of a city and give an average. So this is sort of the reading for this entire city. But radiation is much more granular than that, and so we would find very different readings just a block away from one another. And so our readings are ground level where people are, which is kind of important if you're trying to figure out
just what
your exposure is,
yeah.
and mapped right to a specific GPS point. So we drive around kind of Google Street Map style and just cover every single thing. So if I tell you that on average the weather in California is about 75, that's not necessarily inaccurate,
right?
But it's not necessarily useful either, right? And so our data is much more specific and tells this is what's happening right outside of somebody's door, and you can actually look. We have Japan basically covered at this point.
Yeah, I was going to ask, where can viewers or things like that?
So you can go to safecast.org, which is our website, right? And we have our map on there which has all of our data. But all of our data is completely open. We publish it under what's called the CC0 license, which basically is as public domain as you can possibly get. So anybody can take our data and do anything they want with it. There's no licensing restriction of any kind. So you can create your own visualizations if you want to. You can tap into our API. You can do certain queries and just get certain kinds of data. You can just download it all in one set. But all the data, everything we have is out there for anybody to take and do whatever they want with.
Was there anything in the getting of this data that kind of was particularly chilling?
Well, so yes, at first, we were the first people to publish the data that showed that the wrong areas had been evacuated.
Oh, wow.
And that's since changed quite a bit, and the lines of where that is have adjusted appropriately. But the initial evacuation zones were just in perfect circles around the plant. There was a 20-kilometer zone and a 30-kilometer zone. But our data showed that there was severe contamination up to 80, 90 kilometers away in different areas. And so, as well as some areas within 20 and 30 that had nothing really noticeable difference. So it's entirely possible that there were people who were evacuated from areas with very low contamination into areas with high contamination.
Oh my God.
And immediately after we published that data, then the Japanese government published data which correlated with that.
Okay.
So they had this data and they knew it, and they didn't do anything about it until other people published the data, and then they sort of
you can't speak for the Japanese government.
I can't speak
but
for the Japanese
theoretically, what would you guess their reasons were for
They
that?
probably didn't think anybody would know.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about here, isn't it? Do not tell, cover up. But they all do know. Except in our community, the mayor himself will not let our hazmat director or the hazmat team take their Geiger counters out and collect any data to make any safeguard towards anybody in this city. Of course, their equipment is upgraded and like ours, but yeah, that's an atrocity to live in a community where the government knows, the agencies know, and they won't even keep a sign up to warn you. Radiation, nuclear zone, uranium zone. You can go to bring your kids to Tendoy School. You can go to Alameda Stake. That's all contaminated area there. And they won't tell you anything other than, oh, well, maybe we should put a do not trespass sign. Idaho knows about trespass signs, but like a lot of people, they park right in the uranium, they trek it right into the schools, right in those kids, and every time it's disturbed and the wind blows, who do you think gets it? Your children. And Tendoy is not the only school. Oh no, Tendoy is not. Tendoy is just one that the city of Pocatello is partially responsible for the contamination of your children and people of the north of the Alameda Stake. Every time you go there, when it's dry and the wind blows and the dust, and what direction does it blow? It blows right towards them, as well as, of course, people tracking it, picking it up in their clothes, their vehicles, bringing it home, bringing it in the church, bringing it in the school. You know, hey, I hope the custodians are doing their job very well, but even they don't have a Geiger counter. Of course, again, the warning signs, yeah, hey, school district himself, principal himself, Tendoy, will go out there and take those uranium warning signs down, which, of course, is illegal to do. But, hey, this is Pocatello, right? You voted these people in. Didn't vote for me because they know what I would do. So let's take a look at other avenues of issues that are going on. Yes, this stuff is global. We know all about it everywhere. In fact, I'm part of the Uranium Film Festival. So let's take a look at how we reach people. Not just with this show, but everything else we do. The world is waking up. Maybe it's about time you do. Stop living in denial. So let's take a look at Karen Kramer, a little bit about Uranium Film Festival.
One of the most memorable interviews of the evening was with Karen Kramer.
Now look at us. Everybody's got it. People are not even as civilized as we were in 1959. We were building bomb shelters in our backyards, most Americans thinking that it was going to save us from the bomb, but we didn't know much about radiation, actually. We were so naive about it. And look where we are today. It's worse. The fear is greater. And we're not addressing it as much as we need to. There's so much wrong in the world today. There's so many issues that need to be looked at. But this, you can't even address the other issues if we don't have a world to live in. So this is why this film festival is so important. That's why everybody who makes a film like this probably isn't going to make a lot of money, but that's not why they should be doing it. They need to educate. I'm so proud of my daughter. It's a kind of a Kramer thing, I think, because we're all activists. Stanley was an activist. Before he met me, I was an activist. And, of course, our children, it's only natural chain of event that they become activists as well. But with Kat's Films That Changed the World, which has been a very successful series with social issues, she has young people, young actors and actresses who are teenagers, who she calls them her ambassadors. They come to every single thing she does because they want to be educated, and she wants them to be educated at young ages. So it has an outreach to it. I'm very proud of her. And there was a documentary recently made in Australia by an Australian filmmaker, because On the Beach was the first American film made in Australia, full-length film made there. And a filmmaker there made a documentary about the making of On the Beach, which I'm on, and I talk about the subjects in the making of that film. We just have to keep regenerating the subject, as depressing as it is. We have to regenerate it, or nothing is ever going to happen. We're going to stay just like we are. It's going to get worse and worse and worse until something could really happen. That's why I think this film festival is important.
That was Karen Kramer. The nuclear power panel was co-moderated by Kat Kramer and Harvey Wasserman and featured Lou Gossett Jr., Isai Morales, and activist Mimi Kennedy, as well as myself.
Nuclear hot seat, what are those people thinking? Nuclear hot seat, what have those boys been drinking? Nuclear hot seat, the corium is sinking. Our time to act is shrinking, but our activists are linking. Nuclear hot seat.
Well, I want to take a look at that. Yes, we're looking for people who want to contribute. Of course, we do. And hopefully some Mars will make it around the world of the story. Denial in Pocatello, living with uranium, behind the uranium curtain. Yes, let's take a look at a little clip, a trailer for the Uranium Film Festival.
I was fairly new to working out on the missile sites. Right above us was a 9 megaton thermonuclear warhead. It was a monster waiting to go off. You think about working on a weapon of mass destruction, you're counting on everything to work perfect all the time. And things just don't work perfect all the time.
From the very beginning of the atomic age, there has been a sense of this immense power just being on the verge of slipping out of our control.
The warhead on top of the Titan II was 3 times as powerful as all the bombs used in the Second World War, including both the atomic bombs.
Sheriff, has the Air Force told you very much?
They haven't told me a darn thing.
Does that make you mad?
Yes, it does.
We got a potential nuclear explosion 46 miles from here. If that warhead explodes, little one's gone. Do we let the world know? What do you do?
This is your warning. Help me! For me.
The governor of the state of Arkansas is Bill Clinton.
As regards the nuclear explosion, all we can do is to trust the experts.
Is there a warhead on the site?
I cannot confirm or deny.
The Air Force is telling people it's not happening.
Before September 18th,
This is just a nightmare.
the only warheads that we thought would go off in the United States would be Soviet. We never considered our own warheads could detonate on our own continent.
Nuclear weapons are machines, and every machine ever invented eventually goes wrong.
Yeah, here we have a situation. Just like the other one, like, hey, it hasn't happened yet. Really? Some things happen quickly, some things happen over time, slowly, till you acclimate to it, till you basically find yourself living in uranium and do not know what to do. Of course, LUDS disease ain't helping you because it's affecting your nervous system and your brain tissue. You basically have trouble doing anything. Not the fact that facing reality, facing the fact that your government does this to you. What is government when it is out of hand, when it does these things to you? You're just, war casualties here in Pocatello. You're a big experiment for the Pocatello Medical Center. All the rare cancers that exist here. I mean, that's a study area. Hey, let's see what kind of really weird stuff can happen. Hey, maybe we'll make a new movie and Mutations or the X-Men, Pocatello, things like that. Well, let's take a look at, well, and probably end our time today. So I'll catch it all, but hey, I'll re-edit this, or somebody will, and we'll publish it on the Pocatello Valley Voice and all over the world. So, take a look. The 12 or the 6 movements.